welcome to Sinister Studies. Join me each episode as I delve into some truly sinister topics and traumatize my family. I'll be joined by one or more teenager, and from time to time, we'll have special guests. Be forewarned, our stories are seriously sinister, so listener discretion is always advised. Cucumber mint water.
Oh, she's like dead. She's like, it's too hot. I'm not doing anything.
Studies on my phone. Got an update today.
Did we?
I did. Just a brief one. The judge presented at trial access to this, like things such as autopsy photos. Get out. These are children.
No. Like,
So,
that is just something that does not need to be shared.
I mean, I get under, Information Act and everything, but you don't need fucking autopsy photos of murdered children. From me, dog.
Yeah, that's a little. Guys, if your ears are currently unblocked and your nose is not stuffed, and like you're just like you're all right, everything's just clear, take a moment to be grateful for that. Like, if you can breathe through both nostrils right now and hear in both ears, take a moment and be like, wow, this is great.
If you're not allergic to things that are growing, just be grateful.
Also, if your ear is blocked and you don't have like any of those fancy ass eardrops and you're like, I don't want to go get them, you probably have hydrogen peroxide at home. Put that shit in your ears. Just do it until it all comes out, because it will all come out. I don't know what it does, but it like fizzes in your ear and it feels weird as shit, but like
hey, it worked.
I heard out of this ear clearly for the first time in 2 days. And now I can hear through both ears. It's a lovely existence. I can put both my earbuds in. It's great.
Yes.
Kitty loafing in the window.
I did promise something lighter. I mean, people die, but it's lighter.
Oh, are we finally... What's with the sound effects?
So that was the closest thing I could find to what that rhyme in my head should sound like. That is part of the trailer from Lizzie the movie from 2018 in like a jump rope rhythm.
Yeah, like...
Everything else I found is like... No, that's not the rhythm. That you can't jump rope to that shit.
Duh.
You laugh, but I listened to some shit today.
What do you mean? Like,
what was very similar to that. Very similar. So yes, we're going to talk about Lizzie Borden today. I feel
for multiple days. How many are we thinking?
Probably 2, possibly 3. I'm not sure yet.
Okay, well,
we'll see how we got shit to talk about.
Yeah. The
Wayback Machine. You don't know what the Wayback Machine is? No, you don't, do you? You do? You know what the Wayback Machine is?
No, but it's just like, that's how you're going to introduce that?
Oh, yes, we're going back to In the Wayback Machine.
Okay.
To August 4th, 1892. Back into her house to find that her laying on a sofa in their living room, covered. I would describe it more as a chaise, so I think you're correct here. That was very dramatic.
It's a shame y'all can't see that. I just
it was a very good reenactment. immediately called the family maid, Bridget, whom Lizzie and her sister Emma both called Maggie. Why? There's two frames of thought here. One is that it was just her nickname. The other is a rumor that Lizzie and Emma were so stuck up that they couldn't be bothered to learn their maids' names. And since their first maid was named Maggie, they just called all their maids Maggie.
That's crazy.
That's the rumor on the street. I don't know how accurate that is. That was many a year ago. I was not present. What are you doing?
I sure hope you weren't present. Oh my god. The idea of you being present in the 1800s?
I'm secretly a vampire.
Yeah. Would I get to be a vampire too then?
I don't know how that would work. I don't. If anybody knows, just let us know, because
Yeah. Are we vampires?
they lived not in the richest part of Fall River, but in a pretty well-off, established neighborhood. So Bridget ran to their neighbor's house, who happened to be a doctor, to fetch him for Andrew Borden. But the doctor was out, so Bridget returned to the Borden home. In the backyard, when she heard a groan and came back to find the door open and her father bloody on the couch.
Ooh, that was disgusting.
And since the doctor wasn't available, Lizzie sent the maid to get her best friend Alice to help while she waited in the doorway of the house. Neighbor Adeline had seen the maid.
They just don't make names like that.
They really don't. Had seen
like they used to.
the maid running around and Lizzie standing in the doorway, so she went to the Borden home to see what the issue was. Lizzie told her that her father had been killed.
Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty fair assessment of the situation.
When the murder occurred, she had been out in the barn. Stepmother had planned to visit a sick friend, and she had not seen her since she'd been back in the house. Adelaide offered to track down a doctor for Lizzie, so she left, again leaving Lizzie alone at the house. Bridget was returning from Lizzie's friend's house when she saw the neighbor, Dr. Bowen, arriving home. So she rushed over to Dr. Bowen and dragged his ass over to Lizzie's house. Lizzie told the doctor that Andrew was dead, possibly stabbed. He was covered in blood.
Like she couldn't even tell? Or what? It was like possibly stabbed? Like it seems pretty obvious.
It was a lot of blood. And a lady of means would not dirty her hands by touching something like that.
Also, don't think anybody would want to.
Probably not. Back because the family had recently been complaining of illness, been poisoned. Suspicious that suddenly Andrew was dead. They had been somehow poisoned. And it was the whole family.
Lizzie included?
Everybody. Showed Dr. Bowen to the sitting room, where he found Andrew Borden laying on his side. His face was pretty much unrecognizable due to it being smashed in. He had been stabbed in the face because it was just completely demolished.
That's crazy.
He noted that the room seemed otherwise undisturbed, with the exception of the still warm body of Andrew.
Well, that seems like a pretty big disturbance to me.
You know what? That's a fair point. I mean, in the grand scheme of disturbed versus undisturbed, a mutilated body would be on the disturbed end. It would be pretty high up on that spectrum.
Yeah.
Whereas Zoe, rolling around like a little piggy, is on the low end of that spectrum. So Lizzie's friend Alice arrived to find the maid, the neighbor, and Lizzie all looking stunned. She led them to the kitchen and sat everybody down. She was struck by the fact that Lizzie, usually quite composed, looked very, very distraught. For obvious fucking reasons.
Yeah.
So Alice sat with Lizzie, holding her hand and letting her head rest on her shoulder. And then, as if just remembering, Lizzie suddenly asked if somebody could find Mrs. Borden, stepmother. Lizzie told everybody in the room that she did not know where her stepmother was. She didn't know if she'd already come back from the sick friend's house or not. The women wanted to search the home for Mrs. Borden, but no one wanted to walk through the sitting room to get to the rest of the house.
Well, yeah.
The house is very oddly set up. There's certain passage, like certain back ways. It's just an odd layout. The house is an odd layout. At this point, another neighbor, Charles, shows up with a police officer, George Allen. Officer Allen closed the scene. One could do back in the 1890s. And then he deputized Charles with orders to keep everybody out. Nobody had gone to look for Mrs. Borden. So Bridget and Adeline decided that somebody had to, so they made their way through the sitting room, trying not to look at Andrew. They made their way upstairs where they discovered Mrs. Borden dead in the guest room, face down in a pool of blood.
That's crazy.
The Fall River Police Department were on the scene searching the Borden property and questioning Lizzie. They asked her who could possibly want to harm her father. Found that she knew of. Portuguese? Because at the time, being Portuguese in Fall River was the worst fucking thing that could happen to you.
So were they like, it must have been the Portuguese?
That's pretty much any time a crime was committed around this time, the wealthy people blamed it on the Portuguese.
Those damn Portuguese. I don't know.
If only those people could visit Fall River today. Lizzie's Uncle John arrived. He had showed up with very little notice the night before and stayed at their house. He had been running errands that morning with plans of joining the Bordens back at home for lunch. Alice escorted her friend Lizzie to her bedroom, where Lizzie seemed to kind of level out. She first told Alice which undertaker should be called, and then telling Alice that there was a bucket of blood-stained cloth in the basement, and she didn't want police to jump to conclusions. She just wanted to let them know that she was on her period. Because, that's all I couldn't woman back then. As much as I would like to say that I could have woman back then, I can't, because just free bleeding like that seems like...
They didn't have anything?
The bucket of blood-stained rags, that's what you had. And then you had to wash them every day. Lizzie in the room to notify police, and when she returned, she found Lizzie had changed from her work clothes that she was wearing when she found her father into a pink wrap dress with a red ribbon. Isn't that strange? As well-to-do ladies of the time had an image to uphold, and it was in poor form to receive anyone into your home without being properly dressed.
Even when somebody was just multiple people were just brutally murdered. She's like, oh, I gotta look pretty though.
It's all about appearances. Themselves in Lizzie's bedroom to keep everybody out and to keep everybody away from Lizzie. But the police did eventually get to Lizzie, and she was interviewed over and over again by multiple police officers, as one would be, having found a dead body in your home. And she told everybody the same story. Lizzie had a number of chores to do that morning: ironing handkerchiefs, putting away clean clothes, and doing some mending. She was in the kitchen heating the irons for the handkerchiefs. She was sitting reading a magazine, and her father had come in and was going to the living room. Was not a really strange occurrence. Her stepmother was either still upstairs making up the guest room where her uncle had stayed, or maybe she'd already left to visit her sick friend. Lizzie was not sure. Bridget had just finished washing the windows and had gone upstairs to take a nap. Not yet hot enough to iron with, Lizzie decided that she was going to go out to the barn to look for her fishing pole. While she was up there,
she had a fishing pole.
She was going to go fishing.
She was going to go fishing? She's like, man, these irons are taking too long. I'm going to go fishing.
No, she was looking for her pole so she could later go fishing. She wasn't going to leave hot irons out and then go. I'm assuming that would have been a fire hazard even back then, especially back then. So while she was up there, she'd heard a noise, so she returned to the house to find the door open. Interrogators felt that Lizzie was too calm, not emotional enough, and because of this, she immediately became the prime suspect. For what it's worth, everybody that knew Lizzie, she maintained a relatively even demeanor, regardless of what was happening around her. So for her to show a shred of emotion was unusual.
Also, it's not too uncommon for people to, like, dissociate when, that's traumatic.
Yes, they would not have, they weren't even close to thinking about disassociation back in 1890.
It happens.
And another thing is that Lizzie was a spinster. Lizzie and her sister were both in their 30s and both unmarried.
Oh my mon Dieu, I mean, man.
So even though we're getting slightly into modern times, it was still really looked down upon for somebody in their 30s not to be married.
Because it's just so terrible. It's just so terrible. That's so.
Yeah, no, that's true. I would agree. Married your father, according to some people.
According to what people?
Many people.
Many?
I was 27. I was pushing 30.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Wow, that's so crazy. And 27. That's just,
it's appalling. I know. A youngin' to come and whisk me away.
Don't say it like that.
In my defense, I didn't know how old your father was when we met.
How old did you think he was?
I knew he was old enough to get into the club.
Okay.
That I knew.
Well, there's that.
So in 1892, Fall River was the height of textile manufacturing in the U.S. Most factories were on the river.
Well, yeah.
Like many cities of the time, Fall River were ruled over by a few extremely wealthy families. The Bordens were on the top of that list. They owned much of the waterfront property in the area. The wealthy people lived up. Lizzie was a whopping 32 years old. She was born July 19th, 1860, to Andrew Borden and his wife, Sarah.
1860 is crazy.
Sarah died when Lizzie was 3, and sister Emma was about 13 years old. They say she died of uterine congestion.
What the fuck is that? Uterine congestion?
I am at a loss. Oh, let's Google that shit.
Uterine.
Oh, you're Googling it for me?
Congestion. Because what the fuck does that mean? Can you die of that? apparently pelvic congestion syndrome is a thing, but it just says it causes chronic pain. But like, can you die?
It is a condition that occurs when the veins in the pelvis that supply blood to the uterus and ovaries become dilated or widened.
But like, can you die from that? I don't.
I mean, most definitely, probably back then. And it also does affect the spine as well. And 13-year-old Emma promised her dying mother that she would care for Lizzie. And Emma, by all accounts, pretty much did just that.
Isn't she like 40-something at this point? When the whole situation.
Yeah, she would have been. Yes. He can't just close the door. He has to slam it. It's been an ongoing thing. It drives me crazy. One day I'll miss the slamming door.
It's like, it does not take that much effort. You do not have to put. Like,
he doesn't understand that the doorknob can turn, and
you don't have to put your shoulder into closing the bathroom door. You can just close it behind you.
Andrew would remarry a few years later to Abby.
Slay.
Did I ever tell you what great grandma told me about getting remarried?
What?
So,
wait, did great grandma get remarried?
No. So this was before I met your father. So she told me, and it's, honest to God, this is, I feel like it's very true. She told me that if the roles had been reversed and she had gone before my grandfather would have gotten married because men can't function without a wife after they get to a certain age.
Okay.
And your grandmother and her sister kind of encouraged grandma to get out and do, like, socialize, not to date. I mean, she was in her friggin' 70s, for Christ's sakes. But
never too late.
No, the tea she dropped about what was going on in that assisted living facility when she moved in there.
Did you know that like nursing homes and shit are like hot spots for STDs?
Do you want to know that I know this firsthand? Why?
Firsthand?
Because secondhand. I work at a urologist's office, and we had one patient who came from a nursing facility, and every time he fucking walked in the door, we had to STD test him because he was always carrying something because they were all fucking each other. All these elderly people.
What better is there to do in there?
They don't have anything better to do. Never get remarried. She wouldn't have gotten remarried. It was never on the table. She did not need another man.
Kind of real.
Yeah. And she never did. She never even entertained the idea. Who was hooking up with who in the assisted living?
You got all the assisted living.
Oh, I went a couple of times. I went at dinner time, and we'd sit in the dining room, and she would be like, "You'd see that one."
What would she just be pointing? You would not believe.
He was sitting at this one's table 2 weeks ago, and now he's sitting at this lady's table. And yes, it was
scandalous.
I got all the tea. I get the high school tea from you, and nursing home tea from great grandma.
Is there any tea that we need to catch up on before we... I'll think about it.
What are you doing?
And if there's anything interesting that's happened, we can talk about it at the end.
Okay, so getting back to Lizzie. Lizzie reportedly did not consider Abby Borden her mother, and she usually went to Emma for help, guidance, and love, rather than going to Abby. They never really fostered a relationship with each other. And I imagine it was the same with Emma, especially Emma being older
Yeah.
and seeing her father do this.
Yeah. Because she actually had memories with her mother.
Yes, and you notice. I mean,
yeah, like she was old enough to have like an awareness of what was happening.
I don't think I would get married if Dad went first. I wouldn't do it again.
You wouldn't? Why not?
I just don't have the desire to.
What?
It's such a pain in the ass.
To get married?
Oh, dating now. It's all fucking dick pics. And I work with some single ladies. They've seen some things.
You don't want to
trust me.
To download Tinder.
Can I tell? I just like to like.
Mom is not getting a Bumble account.
I would like to make a public service announcement to all the single men out there that if you send a woman an unsolicited dick pic, I promise to fucking God, all of her friends are going to see it.
Yeah, they're going to be making fun of you.
All of your friends are going to see it.
And they're gonna be judging you. They're gonna be like, really? That angle? They're gonna be like looking at the background, being like, and look at his broom, it's disgusting. And his dick is small.
I saw one where the guy had red lighting to make himself look like Satan, and he had horns on. I shit you not.
Yeah,
it was a full body nude.
And was it like a filter?
He wasn't.
He actually have...
No, he literally had horns.
Oh my God.
So, and he wasn't jacked. I mean, this wasn't like it wasn't like
it wasn't even like impressive.
It wasn't at all.
It was just goofy.
It was just like, why the fuck would you do that?
Oh, wow.
Why? Guys, seriously.
Also, your dick pics are probably ugly as fuck anyway. Let's be real. Nobody wants to see them.
Penises are kind of ugly by default. I hate to say it, but they are. Like, they serve a purpose. It is what it is. I don't know what to tell you guys.
I see pictures men take just like of anything. Like, you guys,
they're using that 0.5 filter, aren't they?
taking 0.5
oh, that's so disturbing. Someone's gonna send us a 0.5 picture of their dick. Killing us.
Okay. So you will not be dealing with that?
No, I will not be dealing with that. That concludes my public service announcement. So, back to Lizzie. Lizzie actually was pretty community-oriented. She taught Sunday school to Chinese immigrants.
Okay, not bad, not bad.
She was secretary of the Fruit and Flower Mission. I don't know. It was, and she was author of the Young Women's Christian Temperance Union.
What's that?
They're the ones who pushed for prohibition, eventually.
Ugh, lame.
They really didn't know much about Lizzie prior to the crimes because she usually did keep to herself. As is the case in a lot of scandals of this nature, suddenly, after everybody knows the people involved.
Yeah.
Personally. They're personal friends. Some said Lizzie...
Oh my God. If you die and you have like some fake ass people at your funeral, like people who never gave a shit about you, should I be calling them out?
Go for it. Like,
if there was some bitch who was like mean to you that showed up to your funeral, I didn't like she like, oh, I don't know if it was today or yesterday, but it was this girl at her mom's funeral, and she was like, and I don't even know why y'all here, because y'all are fake ass bitches. You did not give a shit about her. Like, she was cussing them out, and I was like, you know what, girl, that's kind of real. That's kind of real.
It's, I mean, some people just like going to things like that. A lot of people said that Lizzie seemed aloof, especially with new people, much like her father. So, like, literally, if this happened today, I understand that I am a lot like Lizzie in that respect. I get it. I know. A friend church event where a waiter dropped a tray full of dishes on Lizzie, which trapped her hands. So it must have been. She didn't yell. She just asked if someone could help her. Investigators that she was a woman of a bad disposition. A bad disposition. Probably because she was 2 years old and sick of everybody's shit.
A bad disposition is crazy.
Another person said that Lizzie is known to be ugly.
Is known to be ugly?
Is known to be ugly.
Known to
I mean, you could interpret that any way you want. It could be known to be ugly, like physically, or known to be an ugly person, as in
like personality-wise, like ugly on the inside. But like that's crazy.
Like what the fuck, guys?
Ugly person. Imagine like your parents just get like brutally murdered, and people are just like, well, she's an ugly person, so it's like, what, man?
So I'm guessing that her uncle's opinion of her is part of the reason that the city marshal and people who called her ugly said what they said. He describes her as being strong-willed and willing to fight for what she considers her rights. And in the 1800s, that was shocking. Oh, to make it even worse.
God forbid.
So she was an unmarried woman with an opinion.
Oh my God, that's crazy. It's absolutely insane. What crazy. Oh my God.
But in a later interview, he would tell reporters that she had a repellent disposition.
A repellent disposition.
So she had resting bitch face. Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay, real.
So, forward and would never that she would have killed Andrew and Abby. She may have been an opinionated bitch, but she wasn't a murdering bitch. At the time of his death, Andrew Borden was worth over... Again, I tried multiple inflation calculators, and most of them only go back to 1913.
Really?
So
I had one that went back to
worth over $16 million at the time of his death.
That's crazy. I mean, he owned a lot of property or whatever.
When he was killed, he had $81 in his pocket, which is roughly $2,600 today, which is fucking mind-boggling.
Just in his pocket, just chilling on him.
Can you imagine just walking around with $2,600 in your pocket?
In my pocket, just chilling. Did anybody get that money, or
no? Well, I'm sure somebody took it out of his pocket, but it wasn't his murderer. Andrew Borden was a self-made man. He'd worked as an undertaker at one point and a cabinet maker, eventually becoming president of the Union Savings Bank and director of the BMC Durfee Safe Deposit and Trust Company. And he also served on the board of directors for multiple mills.
Mills. Yeah, because they're creating textiles.
He also
there has to be mills.
There has to be mills. He also owned 2 farms and a very large portion of the Fall River waterfront.
2 farms is... How do you even manage 2 farms? Like, why don't you just have one big farm instead of 2 separate farms?
Don't know.
That's my question.
Andrew was a very frugal man, though. The Bordens did not live on the hill.
Did they live on a separate, smaller hill?
They lived on a smaller hill, a mini hill. They did not have gas lighting. And they did not have running water throughout the house.
Damn. See, I don't care how frugal I am. If I am, like, rich and I can afford running water when they first start having running water, I'm getting the running water. Like, come on, dude. You don't want to, like...
They had it downstairs.
Just not through the whole house?
Not through the whole house. He did splurge on central heating and a flushable toilet.
Well, yeah. Yeah, you know what?
So he did have some of the modern comforts of his time in his home. It just wasn't all of the modern comforts. Andrew was described as a tight-fisted, courteous, and who was fair and honest in his business dealings. Terrible to say about him.
Unlike his daughter. Oh my god.
But he was a man.
Yeah.
Abby was described as ordinary. She was caring and kind, but not very affectionate with Lizzie and Emma.
Damn, that's crazy. Okay, I don't know. I don't understand how shit like that happens. Like, you marry somebody who has kids, and you're just like, part of, like, if you're gonna marry someone who has kids, like, the kids become part of your responsibility, or at least, like, you can't be, like, hateful towards them. Like, you have to at least, like, be a guardian to them.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I absolutely get that, which is why I feel very, like, lucky that Grandma, when she remarried,
Yeah.
my dad, because it could have gone very differently.
Married somebody worthy of being your dad.
Yes. And someone who I ultimately chose to be my dad. I'm not saying it was easy. And I'm not saying that I felt overly accepted by maybe the extended family on that side.
Yeah.
But
like you know, when you hear stories,
he always like acted as my father. He wasn't.
Yeah. Like, I don't understand. Like, you gotta at least be normal about the kids. Like, you can't be like, oh, fuck these kids. Like, you like, we've all heard stories of people being like, well, it's me or the kids. And it's like, the fuck?
That happened to your uncle. So,
she got her head in the couch.
It was common knowledge that Lizzie and Emma did not really take to Abby either. To themselves, and neither called Abby mother the older they got. Emma called her Abby, but Lizzie called her Mrs. Borden when she reached adulthood, although she did call her mother as a child. The disagreement began when Abby Borden's mother moved away and her house was to be sold, but her sister still lived in the house but could not afford to buy it herself. So Abby spoke to Andrew, and Andrew bought the house, in which he then deeded to Abby, who then let her sister live in it. I don't know how accurate it is. The man's worth $16 million. I doubt a single house is the cause of all this. So, these are the Borden ladies, because they were never told by or Abby about the real estate transaction. Outsiders told them. Outsiders. But also because Andrew purchased a home for his sister-in-law, but he would not buy one for his own children. Because, I mean, really, they're fucking middle-aged ladies. They don't want to live with their father anymore.
Well, yeah, obviously.
As a result, Andrew deeded grandfather's home on Ferry Street to Abby and Lizzie, which rent out for 5 years. And Andrew buy the house from them for $5,000, or approximately $160,000. I mean, it sounds like a very convoluted real estate.
Yeah.
On rent from the house, and then he would buy them the house back. But I don't know. This is when Lizzie started calling Abby Mrs. Borden. The girls would not acknowledge Abby or her family. Oh, it may sound like the Borden women were going without, but they weren't. Don't worry. Andrew did pay for Emma to go to seminary school, and Lizzie went on a grand tour of Europe, which I don't know why we stopped doing that.
What, just stopped, like, just randomly going?
Stopped grand tours of Europe. I would like to go on a grand tour of Europe.
I feel like, yeah, that was just a more common thing for people to do back then. They're just like, well, I'm going.
They also had portraits done of them, expensive clothes, and allowances worth more.
That's another thing done of people. Like, I know we have pictures now, but like,
Yeah, you got to be really wealthy to sit for a portrait. I mean, truly. They also got an allowance from their father on top of everything else. But rumors persisted that Andrew was a greedy miser. He didn't really see why the girls would want more than what he was already giving them. And he didn't understand why they may want a place on the hill where all their peers lived, in a house that had all the other that the wealthy people had in their homes, such as full house plumbing.
yeah, that would be nice.
About a year prior to his murder, Andrew had reported to police that someone had broken in while his girls and a maid were at home. They stole $80 in cash, which would be about $3,000, about $30 in gold, about $1,000, and some tickets that were specific to Andrew Borden, watch and a chain. Suspicious at the time, and only Andrew and Abby's items were stolen.
Peculiar.
It was rumored that a ticket was used by Lizzie, and again, it was a specific Andrew. And Andrew would then put a stop to the investigation, but police have no mention of this incident in any of their reports. And in the months following this, their barn was broken into twice. There wasn't much of value in there except for a flock of pigeons.
I mean, a flock of pigeons.
They had a flock of pigeons.
Domesticated? I'd love to have a pigeon. They're cute. Pigeons are cute, especially when they're round, when they're plump.
I'll keep thinking that. Because one rumor said that Andrew had beheaded all the pigeons as a punishment. This is obviously it's a rumor.
Well, I wouldn't be beheading pigeons if they were my pigeons.
So the rumor was that he had killed all of the pigeons. So Lizzie used the same hatchet that he beheaded the pigeons with to kill him.
Pigeons, I could treat you better.
But it actually seems that the pigeons were only kept as livestock and were served for dinner. They were the chunky ones, like I saw in New York. Big old chunky, chicken size pigeons. They did actually kill the pigeons after the break-in to deter burglaring to the house. This is going to deter people from breaking into your house, but maybe it's like, look how fucking crazy I am. I'm going to kill these.
Were people going to steal the pigeons?
I don't know.
I just don't understand. Maybe they'd go, they'd hit the barn up, they'd see the dead pigeons, and they'd be like, oh, hell no, I'm out.
But apparently this was only partially true because Lizzie would later testify that he'd wrung their necks and had not used a hatchet on them. Yeah. 1892. When asked who may want her father dead, Lizzie said that she could not name anybody. But Alice told her to tell them about the man.
The man.
The man. The night prior to the murder, he had showed up at her house with a tale to tell. There had been multiple daylight break-ins. Rude man that her father had kicked out after an argument about a rental property. Working around the home at night. And how they thought that this person was who was responsible for poisoning the family. What is going on with you? Why are you so sad? Yeah, I know, because it's almost bedtime. I know it is.
You guys hear her desolate cries?
Why don't you come sit on the couch?
Like, I don't know what she wants, but she's just been like, half of the time we've been recording.
So Lizzie told Alice that She was afraid for her father's life at this point. She feared that somebody would burn their house down.
Oh, maybe not right about that.
Well, there was some random dude hanging out around their house.
Yeah, that's weird.
And she did tell police that 2 weeks prior, a man came over, and she could hear them speaking in lower tones until she heard the man say, "Leave." So I don't know if he was trying to put some shady-ass business. And Cunningham, who worked for a local newspaper, was in the area at the time and saw neighbor Adelaide running around the streets looking for help. So he followed her and overheard her telling people about the scene.
He's like, this is where the story is. I gotta go there.
He found a telephone and notified the marshals, his editor, and another newspaper as well. Before police even arrived, a reporter was camped out at the Borden home. He was able to get into the house during the chaos, and he was in the house for at least 10 minutes.
Just watching?
He was able to see the women gathered around the kitchen table. He was able to see Dr. Bowen showing Andrew's wounds to the police officers, and another officer upstairs examining Mrs. Borden. So he was all over the house. There were also reporters outside searching their yard. Not the police, reporters. The first articles about the incident were published within 2 hours, and those special editions immediately sold out. But the county medical examiner, Dr. Dolan, was walking by at the same time that the investigation was going on, so he went to see what was going on. I feel like it's one of those things, like a fire truck is going off, so we go out to see what's going on. I think that's what happened here, because it doesn't make sense that all these people are just wandering around in front of the Borden house.
Yeah, they just so happened to be there.
He was startled by the injuries, and he would later be quoted as saying, "Mr. Borden's face is the most ghastly thing that I've ever seen."
When he was dead, right?
When he was dead.
Okay. Imagine somebody saying that, like, after you died, and he was just like, by the way, he had the most ghastly face.
He was ugly as fuck. Distinct cuts. There was a 2.5 by 4 inch opening on the left side of his skull. Abby 18 blows. And in a search of the house, in the cellar, they found 2 hatchets on a shelf. One was a claw hatchet, which was well rusted and had a smudge of red on the handle.
On the handle, though, not on the blade.
2 more were found elsewhere in the cellar as well. And these discoveries obviously interested the police greatly.
How?
They wanted to search Lizzie's room, but it was locked, and when they knocked, Dr. Bowen cracked the door open. Dr. Bowen asked them to wait. When he returned, he would ask them if searching Lizzie's room was absolutely necessary. It was. Only then were they allowed to enter Lizzie's room.
That's kind of fair, though.
Lizzie was lying on a sofa, and she told them that her door was always locked and nobody could get in. And she also wanted to know how long this would take.
That's fair. Honestly, these are the questions I'd be asking.
But at the same time, I can understand. She's like, could you just move it the fuck along?
Yeah.
Because if it was in that kind of tone, I get their annoyance. I get it. So they searched both Lizzie's room and Emma's. They were connected. It was a door, but they were connected. Investigators questioned her again. She confirmed that she was in the barn during the crime for about 20 to 30 minutes. For her blunt and matter-of-fact demeanor during the interview. I do not like that girl. She does not act in a manner to suit me.
She does not act in a manner to suit me.
It is strange to say the least. We will be out of your hair shortly, sir. Asked her if she'd be better if they interviewed her the following day because of her attitude. Could talk to him now just as well as any other time.
Damn, she is done.
Of the barn because they couldn't understand why a girl would want to spend time in the barn. What's her name? Adelaide and Alice found Abby Borden. She was partially under the bed. By the time the police photographer arrived to take crime scene photos, both Abby and the bed had been moved. She was now positioned between the bed and the wall, with her arms beneath her, and they took a whopping 2 pictures of the crime scene.
Wow.
With her skirts straightened properly, and the bed had also been made.
Gotta keep her image all nice and proper, even in death. Oh, okay.
Like, Andrew sat down and just got immediately beat in the fucking head and fell over. That's what it looks like. Doesn't look like he had actually laid down. It looks like he got either. And if he did lay down, he had sat up because somebody was in the room.
It looks like he was sitting up and then he like slumped over.
Yes, it does not look like he was laying down taking a nap.
Yeah, because like you think at least like he'd look more comfortable. His head would be like solidly like
his feet would not be on the floor.
Yeah,
because that's not how you take a nap.
Yeah. Do you ever just take a nap? Like, because I don't.
No, I don't.
Definitely looks like
of Abby Borden was. So she's literally between the bed and the dresser,
laying dead,
face down, arms under her, skirts pulled all the way down to her heels,
like a proper woman. Bed.
The other one's slightly more gnarly. I can taken from a different angle.
More head.
More
visible.
head. More head. Yes. Yeah. More head. So the picture of Andrew Borden on the sofa was the only crime scene photo taken up.
That's it?
That's it. The one we just looked at. And like I said, he's completely off center. It looks like he was sitting up and somebody pushed him over or cracked him over the head and he slumped over. It does not look like he was laying on a couch taking a nap. Doesn't look like it.
His feet are on the ground. It looks like he maybe like he was sitting and then something hit him in the head and he went like that, you know?
And I just want you to know that this is verbatim.
See?
That the investigation was less than ideal. Due stakes.
Yeah, less than ideal, indeed. Just like STDs.
Just like STDs, less than ideal. That is your second PSA for the day. STDs, less than ideal.
Yeah.
Shitty investigations, also less than ideal. Dr. Dolan would set up a makeshift morgue in the living room and the dining room. He brought in folding exam tables, and the couple were stripped and autopsied in the house.
That's crazy. In the house?
In August.
Ugh.
The samples were taken and shipped to Harvard for analysis. The photographer did take more pictures while all of this was going on. He just did not take thorough crime scene photos. Their clothes were then thrown together and sent to the wash cellar. They didn't even keep their clothes.
That's crazy.
I'm gonna wash them. I'm sorry. Even back then, I would probably say, we're not keeping these. Not a good idea. Abby were sewed back up and locked in the dining room for the night. And they were covered with sheets of the murders, only believing that her father may be sick due to a very vague telegram that she had received. She took a moment and then immediately took charge of the situation. She called the lawyer and asked Bridget to stay on with the family. In the house, at the local drugstore, rumors were starting to fly, and everyone was talking about the murders. But around that Lizzie was the suspect at the drugstore, and another told a story of how on August 3rd, supposedly Mrs. Borden came into the drugstore for 10 cents of prussic acid, which today is called cyanide.
Oh.
It was to put on the edges of her sealskin cape, which may have been to keep moths away. She was denied the sale because she didn't have a prescription. You could definitely overdose on cyanide.
Gee, really?
That day, the police were on scene, and they took the employee to the house, and they wanted him to confirm that Lizzie's voice was the voice that he heard try to buy the poison. Is that apparently the wife of a police investigator had been running her own little sting on local stores to see who would sell poison without a prescription.
Damn, that's crazy.
So it's entirely possible that somebody else was looking for
her.
That was not her. These women were in the area, going pharmacy to pharmacy, trying to buy arsenic, prussic acid, and they'd been refused in most pharmacies.
Yeah.
One of the women loosely resembled Lizzie. But again, that's up for debate. We don't have any confirmation on this. Police standing guard that they were going to bed and would be locking the door. And if they needed anything, they should knock. Bridget stayed across the street with Dr. Bowen's servant, while Alice stayed in the Borden's bedroom. Their uncle slept in the house as well. Officers would come to get the hatchets the following day. They didn't take them with them that day. They came back the following day to take the hatchet that they'd found, and district police searched the barn themselves. The undertaker came that night for the Bordens, and they decided that they were going to have an open casket viewing for the family. Okay. I don't think undertakers had that level of skill in their toolbox back then. And very few have it today. So I don't know. Lizzie reportedly stated media speculation was rampant and sensationalized. Lots of talk about suspecting Lizzie, and word would spread to all of New England. People were on edge and curious, milling around in the street around the Borden home were somewhere between 600 and 1,500 people. Just hanging out in the street. I can't imagine if 100 people were hanging out in the street outside our house. Never mind 600 to 1,500. I would run. That'd be it. We'd be done. Nope. I don't even care. I did nothing wrong. I'm not staying here. That's creepy as fuck. And the uncle comes out because Lizzie has been staying in her room. The uncle comes out to find all these fucking people in the road surrounding the house. So Uncle John had showed up unexpectedly the day prior to the murders. He was a horse trader and a butcher by trade.
A horse trader.
He had a big bulbous eyes and a very long beard, like many of the cryptids that we have discussed. He slept in the room that Mrs. Borden was killed in. She was in the room to make the bed because he had slept in it. When the crowd saw John, the hordes cried, "That's the murderer, lynch him."
That's crazy.
Thankfully, he was being tailed by plainclothes police officers, so they were able to escort him to the post office where he was trying to go and back. There was now an advertised $5,000 reward for any info on the crime, and this reward was offered by Lizzie and Emma Borden. Services, Lizzie cried and kissed her father goodbye. People commented on her black dress with beaded trim because it wasn't the conventional morning dress. And
maybe she was wearing it because it was cute. Have you ever considered that? Maybe it
they did not consider that back then.
Maybe it slayed.
You wore proper clothes or nothing at all, apparently. Neither one of the Borden ladies wore veils. A socially acceptable thing to do. It was tradition that an orphaned person, no matter how old they were, wore black wool dress trimmed with crepe for an entire year following the death of their parents. And Lizzie was not wearing a wool dress. They did have a small private funeral for the Bordens. They didn't sing any songs. There were no eulogies.
Back then?
Yeah. People sing songs at funerals now. Mostly hymns and shit, but...
Yeah, that's what I assumed. That's weird. Like, somebody just died and you're like, Jesus. Like, with all due respect.
By the time the caskets were removed from the home, police were holding back a crowd that had swelled to 2,000 to 4,000 people. Waiting for some caskets. Mr. Borden's casket had an ivy wreath, which symbolized fidelity, and Mrs. Borden's had sweet pea, which symbolized simple pleasures or departure, and ferns for sincerity, and white roses for sadness, purity, and silence.
We need to do that shit again. Get really into the language of flowers. That's a lost art.
It really is.
Like, we as a society need to do that again, I think. Also, do you think there were just people in the crowd? Like, do you think there was just somebody walking by and they see this massive ass crowd? They're like, "What the fuck?" And then they come up and they're like, "What's going on? What's going on?"
I think everybody in Fall River knew what was going on at this point. I mean, it had only been like a couple days since the murders, but clearly.
Oh wait, this was multiple days later. Okay,
only a couple, but
you
people couldn't mind their own fucking business.
I mean.
The papers were on site, and they described Lizzie as unstrung and requiring assistance. So the usually stoic Lizzie Borden was an emotional hot mess, which is fair. The sisters...
Why are you laying like that?
The sisters sat in their carriage during the burial services because... seeing an open grave was too much for the delicate sensitivities of Victorian ladies.
I think that's too much for most people. That would be.
It's creepy.
Yeah.
I'm not
especially
gonna lie.
In that condition.
No, just the open graves.
Oh, wait, no, the bodies.
We're just literally talking about open graves.
They closed.
The caskets are closed. They're dropping them in.
I mean, but also, like, seeing people get put in, like, your parents.
I know. I know.
That is a lot.
Weren't lowered into the graves.
What?
After the graveside services, the caskets were taken to the vault at the cemetery by order of the police. And right as they were leaving the house, investigators arrived at the Borden home to search it. Completely tossing all the rooms. So they were finally going to do their job. They found not a damn thing. Again, this time accompanied by the state's medical examiner Dolan and the Borden attorney Andrew Jennings, who was a friend of the family that he had known the Bordens since childhood. The entirety of the house again, and Emma told them she wanted the most thorough investigation, and if they couldn't open something, she would figure out how to unlock it for them. They found nothing in the attic, nothing in the maid's room, nothing in the water tank, the storage rooms, or the guest rooms. They searched the Borden girls' closet, dress by dress, but found nothing. They did take the dress that she wore the day of the murders, but they didn't bother with the silk dresses because a woman wouldn't get dressed up to commit murder. One just wouldn't.
I mean, maybe they would, though.
They basically worked the entire house, top to bottom, and they searched the foundation as well. To request that the family stay in the house. Asked if anyone was suspected, he referenced the angry mob experience that their uncle had had, and he offered them protection. Upon further pressing, he would tell them that Lizzie was the suspected party. Investigators to go with them at any time, and Emma reiterated that they wanted to help in any way that they could. After breakfast, Emma and Lizzie discuss the fate of an old dress that had green paint all over it, and they decided just to burn it. At the same time she was ripping the thing up, Alice came down and told her not to because it just looked really bad.
I mean, yeah.
But Lizzie was doing this right in front of the open windows. If they had really tried to hear the discussion, they could have heard the discussion, and nobody seemed to care what she was doing at the time. They would bring a mason to dismantle the base of the chimney. They emptied the coal bins. They were tearing boards up. In the very same place that they'd found the other hatchets the day of the murder. That apparently wasn't there the day of the murder, but it was there now. The hatchet was broken. It did look like a fresh break, and it was covered in ash. At this point, detectives that she'd lied to police that all the dresses were accounted for in their closet. So Emma did tell the police about the dress that Lizzie had burned on her urging. A warrant was issued for Lizzie's arrest, but the police sat on it for a while. They had basically tiers of newspapers in the area, and all of them had different. It was like the difference between Fox News and CNN. That's basically the way these newspapers broke down. The Evening News was the uppity newspaper. The editor was friends with Mr. Borden and believed Lizzie was innocent. The Globe, which was the more middle-class paper, published tips from the police and some nonsense to keep sales up. Both really leaned on the evidence that favored their viewpoint. The Herald was the lower class of the newspapers. It was less partisan than the other two, and they pretty much would publish everything about the case. That Lizzie was conniving, cold, and obsessed with her wealth and position. Lizzie and her uncle were together, and they'd hired a hitman.
What? Now what?
Yep, just rumors going around. Another uncle apparently verified the daytime break-ins, but claimed that they'd gotten diamonds. They did not keep diamonds in the house. And they tucked her father in for his nap the day of, which he said was not in her nature and suggested that she did it for the money. So basically, everybody's spouting nonsense that will either benefit them or is just fun to say. Police had no leads, so the focus was kept on Lizzie. Where's my pen? Of the murder and after. We will end today. We're going to go in the air conditioning.
I'm going to eat some oranges.
So you don't get the scurvy.
So I don't get scurvy.
So... As usual, feel free to follow us on all your listening platforms.
And on Instagram and Facebook.
You could also email us at sinisterstudiespod@gmail.com.
Rate the podcast. Maybe comment on some of the episodes. Maybe share it places. Tell people. Suppose. Adios.